It's time for AggroChat, the official podcast of the Tales of the Aggronaut blog and stalwart gaming community, where we talk about stuff and things, and the stuff about the things, and sometimes gaming. I'm Belgast, and let's start the show. Hey folks, it's that time again. Time for another episode of AggroChat. This is episode 352. Tonight I'm joined by Ashgar.
To right the countless wrongs of our day, we shine this light of true redemption.
Kodra.
Hi.
Yeah, I'm not going to follow that line. Tam.
Hey, yo.
Dalen.
Team Rocket blast off with the speak of light.
So, okay.
What was it
Claire's
from?
literally giving out like a free month of Funimations that you can go watch The World Ends With You anime. So you should go do that.
Okay.
All right. Is that the actual reason?
Yes. Because the new game is very much a sequel.
Oh,
So they would like you to know the story of the original.
fair enough.
I mean, I have the original game. I should play it.
You should. It's very good.
I bought it some time back when there was some, I think it was a Final Fantasy deal. Like, yeah, it was like buy something on Amazon and get a code for something. I don't remember. But that was what I bought.
All right, the Black Chocobo thing.
Yeah, that.
So, Monster Hunter Stories 2.
So yeah, this is a game I've not played nearly as much of as I would have liked to. But it came out a little over 2 weeks ago now, I think. That sounds about right anyway.
Yeah, something like that.
And it is Monster Hunter Pokemon.
I was going to say, isn't this a game about petting your good Rathalos?
It is.
You're Monsty.
Your Monsty, yes. They kept that name.
I hate that name so much.
Whatever. I kind of enjoy it at this point. But yeah, you are a rider. You basically keep monsters as pets.
And you learn in the opening cutscene that hunters are not to be trusted.
You do learn this. It takes you longer in the first game to learn this. But, you still learn this.
Because they see your pets as a resource to be harvested?
Basically. Basically that.
Who could have guessed?
Pokemon would be a lot darker if that happened.
People running around in armor made out of Pikachus.
Exactly.
I mean, to be fair, you also still do this. Like, you still have to get your armor somehow. Not all monsters are nice.
I just assumed you were, running around in like shorts and a t-shirt and a ball cap or something.
No, you
are still using hunter-style weapons to fight monsters, just alongside other monsters. Like Stories 1 had, what was it? They had Sword and Shield, Greatsword, and Hunting Horn. And Stories 2 also adds to that Hammer, Gun Lance, Bow, and something else. No, just those three. Although it is really interesting to see how they converted the various mechanics from the main series into a turn-based battle system. Like the Sword and Shield is kind of basic, but the Hunting Horn, using attacks in specific orders will get you different effects. And for the Greatsword, you can use charge moves, and then you can follow up by using moves that require charge. As for the actual monsters, there are a lot of them, as far as I can tell.
So do you actually get to fight alongside your monster, or is it just
Yes.
your monster fighting?
You get to fight alongside your monster in a turn-based battle system.
Okay, this is immediately more interesting than I thought it was, because I thought it was like a literal translation of Pokemon, where your monster fights for you.
There is a thing that may take some getting used to, is that your monster makes decisions mostly on its own, unless you spend some resource to command it. And this mostly works because there's a bit of rock, paper, scissors going on, and specific monsters have specific types of moves they like to use, and enemies have specific types of moves they like to use. So making sure you match these up well is really the key to success there. But yeah, it's a pretty fun game. The original was better than the Pokemon game the year it came out, which I'm pretty sure was the first Sun and Moon.
Was the first one also on Switch, or was it 3DS?
First one was a 3DS game.
Okay. Yeah, so that immediately makes this one better that's on the Switch.
If you want to play the first one anyway and don't want to play it on 3DS, it's also on iOS and Android.
I'm not sure if that's more enticing.
I mean, it was basically a touchscreen game in the first place.
Yeah. So this one has been sitting on the list for a really long time, and Tam, I think this is a you thing.
Yeah, I don't think anybody else is.
like I have played a tiny bit of Star Trek Online, enough to know that crew members are basically gear, but I think that's about as far as I got.
I played a little bit when they were, I think think maybe when they introduced the original series stuff.
Yeah. So like, I mean, I'll put Star Trek up there with game properties that, or IPs that don't translate super cleanly into a video game.
Yeah.
I was going to say IPs that have not been well served by the gaming industry, but that might be related.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of both. Like the essential conceit of Star Trek is that it's basically a sci-fi drama.
Yeah. I mean, the best Star Trek video games that I have played were the adventure games.
Yeah.
From back in the day.
Right. And so it would be hard for me to think of anything less suited to Star Trek than an MMO. And so it's interesting I played it when it first came out, kind of bounced off it real hard, but was looking for just something Star Trek to whet my appetite, because I was on a really heavy Star Trek kick for a while. Binging all of Discovery, all of Lower Decks. Like, there's a whole bunch of good Star Trek that you can watch now all of a sudden.
Yep.
And good like intro Star Trek, which kind of like strips down a lot of the series into its core conceits, so that you don't need to know about, decades of TV to make sense of anything that's going on. Star Trek Online is the opposite of that. It is it's probably like 80% deep cuts that don't really make sense unless you know what show or episode or whatever is being referenced, at which point you're like, oh wow, they super accurately recreated this, shot from this great episode.
I mean, they have literally done entire Star Trek Online story arcs, like picking up on threads from shows and carrying on with stuff. I mean, there have been multiple times that I have looked up something about some character or something, and there's all this stuff on Memory Alpha about like all of this that like where did this happen? And it happened in Star Trek Online.
Yeah. Well, and that's sort of the interesting thing. Like, Star Trek is this episodic thing, and there's a lot of hanging loose threads because most of it predates like modern. I mean, all of it predates modern television, other than the most recent stuff. And so there's all of this space to do, hey, what happened to this side character that showed up in one episode? And it's sort of a testament to Star Trek as a concept that you don't really need to know anything about the character to understand the story that's being told, because at its core, it's weird space stuff is happening and diplomacy is hard. But like, it's kind of what you get. And the game, I bounced off of the game initially because it was clear that they captured the episode construct. And so every like quest you go on is an episode, and they usually have an on-foot section, a space section, and then a wild card section. And it got really samey. And it's really interesting to me to see that game's had its entire story reconfigured, as far as I can tell, into like seasonal arcs. So you're doing a bunch of quest missions that make up a season and make up an overall story arc. Plus, it's I think the ground combat is terrible, but not a surprise.
That was kind of my feeling when I tried it.
Yeah, the ground combat is terrible. It's reliant on some mechanics that don't really work. It's a cryptic game, and so a lot of the other cryptic games that I've played and tried again recently, there's a certain amount of just jank to moving around and doing things. But the space combat is great. It's Sid Meier's Pirates and Starships. With all of the ship you're in and the crew you have affects what you can do. And so it's like you're building your ship's, systems and functionality based on what ship you're flying and who you have crewing it, and you can swap people around, and like that's a lot more interesting. And I want a game that dives into that a bit more, because I think that would be a really compelling RPG, like by itself. I mean, honestly, what I think would be really, really cool is a Star Trek game in which you and several friends are flying around in a starship, manning each of these stations, using your own, and are able to use your own abilities amplified by the station. Because it's really interesting playing, like, I've tried a couple of different ships now. It's really interesting playing an assault cruiser. And the assault cruiser is like, what we want to do is alpha strike people. We have a whole bunch of cannons and torpedoes with really narrow firing arcs, and we're really maneuverable. So we're quick, we aim straight at things, and we can hit things that we aim straight at.
Having flashbacks to Starfleet battles.
Yeah. And then in the meantime, you've got like, your big Enterprise, Sovereign class vessels or Galaxy class vessels or whatever that are just huge boats, but they shoot in every direction. So you don't care that they're huge boats and not very maneuverable, because no matter what direction somebody's coming at you from, you can hit them. And you want to broadside people.
When I played it, it definitely felt like my ship was my character, the crew was equipment, and it changed like the abilities that I could do with the ship.
Yeah, that's very much how it works. You have like the ship also has equipment, and you can upgrade various parts of your ship. But yeah, like my own personal abilities are really only one component of what I can do on the ship. It's just interesting. It's interesting to see what they're doing. What is a game that was middlingly to not very successful? When did Star Trek Online come out?
It's been a while.
In over a decade ago. So like, what is a game that came out and did okay over a decade ago look like now?
I don't think it ever did super successfully. It just had kind of a core audience that really wanted a Star Trek game.
We do have other iterations of this. We can also look at like Dungeons and Dragons Online.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting to see how some of those evolve. Because it's really the thing that I remember about Dungeons and Dragons Online, and maybe this is not as charitable a view as I recall, but like I don't remember that game having changed dramatically between the time that we played it and now.
I think the main thing is they finally realized that people don't want Eberron, they want the Forgotten Realms.
Yeah, and they've gone back into Forgotten Realms and storylines that people actually cared about.
I don't know that I ever played anything in the Forgotten Realms.
It didn't exist when we started.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, like it came in when they added in, I think, druids, maybe?
It was after that. Druids were in when we started.
Yeah, I thought druids were in at the start.
No, they were not in at the start.
But yeah, they added.
They were added
Realms.
later. You had to buy them as DLC.
Yeah, they added Forgotten Realms stuff, and I think at this point, if you start the game fresh, you start out in the Forgotten Realms.
Huh.
I mean, I remember they added they added a lot of systems, is what I recall.
Yeah.
Because we were even commenting that there was a lot of stuff to do when we came back.
Yeah. And I remember it being actually pretty interesting and pretty fun, which is sort of my impetus to return to Star Trek Online and see if that had a similar experience. Because like a lot of these games, it's just like, all right, they're visually out of date, but whatever.
Well, so there's a lot of games that have reached a survivable level of players. And it seems like most of them have narrowed in on what is it that our player base actually wants.
Cool
and
ships.
We're going to do some of that. We're not going to worry about reaching like broad swaths of the player base. We're just going to focus on what our actual players want.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that it's really interesting to see these games that have been around for a while that have really honed in on what is it their core audience wants, and how are they meeting that, and especially like for places that seem to have the resources to still do development, what is it they're doing?
Yeah, and I mean, I would say Lord of the Rings Online does a fairly decent job of supporting its player base.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like Lord of the Rings Online is one. I am not the core audience for that game. But I know people who are, and I love it.
I mean, EverQuest 2 continues to churn out content every year. Like, there's an expansion every single year. And from what I can tell, like, there's a fairly thriving player base. I mean, it's really mostly just one server at this point. I think everybody that's really playing seriously is on Antonia Bale, which was the role-playing server. But
yeah,
it has an audience, and they charge a lot for their expansions, but people buy the double super secret special edition to get mounts and stuff like that, and it continues to truck along for, like, I want to say their expansions are like $120 for the super secret edition.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it still sells expansions, and it still pays the bills. I mean, even Neverwinter, the MMO, seems to have a dedicated player base.
Yeah.
And it's not a bad, like, for a janky cryptic game, it's not a bad game.
I mean, that one's also significantly less janky than a bunch of the others.
Yeah. I mean, what kills me about Neverwinter is the 30 million kinds of currency and not knowing if any of it's useful.
Yes.
Yep.
There's so much bag bloat in that game because they'd really like to sell you better bags.
Yeah. And it's interesting because there's a lot of these games that have kind of they've kind of adapted into these cash store vehicles. Some more effectively than others. Like the other game that I logged into was Champions, just because I got a life.
I did that last year. It is still not a good game.
And it should be. That's the part that frustrates me.
Given the time it's been out, and given that it apparently must have a player base if it's still up and ticking.
It doesn't take much of a player base to keep an MMO up and running at a basic level.
Yeah.
Which is, again, why NCSoft is so frustrating.
Yes, well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you know what? I've played the unofficial City Heroes server, and that game is still perfectly playable.
Better than Champions.
It is significantly better than Champions.
Yeah.
I hopped on a Galaxy's private server for a while, and that was a thriving community.
People who are into Galaxies were really into Galaxies.
There's a thriving Warhammer Online community called The Reckoning.
Yep.
There's a thriving Hellgate London community. I've never jumped through all of the hoops.
Okay, I have
do that
one. That.
No, like literally, they have updated the game and patched it. Like, this is an unofficial server. It's called London 2033, I think. I've never gone through the hoops to play on it. Because there's a lot of hoops to be able to play on it. You have to have the original client, you have to patch it up, you have to install a bunch of stuff to be able to connect to it. But, like, from what I hear, the people that are playing on it, like, I mean, thriving is like 3,500 users, something like that.
Sure. Again, it doesn't take that many people to keep this up and running.
Well, I mean, this is an unofficial
just one server. That's
so
pretty. Yeah.
I mean, that was how many people used to be on Zogedy in EverQuest when I was playing on it regularly. Was about 3,000 players at any given time. Shockingly, there's still people that play DAOC.
Wow.
All these years later. And they have a very active social media presence because anytime I say anything about DAOC, the official DAOC account comes from out of the woodwork and favorites it. I see you talking about us.
Look, when it's a niche game, you know, they notice when someone starts talking about it. It's like when we played Tron 2.0.
Yeah.
But like it is weird that there are all these communities that, albeit are fairly insular communities, but they're alive and kicking and people are logging in every single day to play them. But also at the same time, there's a bunch of games that have been quietly on the rise and continue to just slowly pick up players.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously, the one in the news most recently is Final Fantasy XIV, but
Yeah.
Elder Scrolls Online still has an extremely busy player base.
Yeah,
Guild Wars 2 is still very active.
Yeah, like Elder Scrolls Online, it does seem kind of like became a sleeper hit, and just keeps on keeping on.
Well,
and of course, Final Fantasy XIV has been like slowly gaining people over the years, and now just exploded.
And I have to think, especially with those two games, that the secret of their success to this point is predictable cadence of content releases.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that and respecting their players.
Yeah, I still sub to FF14 when I'm not playing it because I support that game. Like that game has so much stuff that I don't want to do.
But someone does.
And it's there for them, and the game doesn't make me do it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to craft, so I don't. I don't want to grind. I don't want to like dive into a tombstone grind. And for the most part, I don't have to. Like, eventually I'm going to run out of gil. Hopefully I'll make up a nest egg back when, hopefully I'll make up a nest egg by the time the next expansion is like, I work my way through the expansion and can kind of ride on that. But like, when I'm having fun, I upgrade my gear and keep it current. And when I take a break and come back, I can usually gear up with crafted stuff, and it's not like backbreaking.
Well, like when I came back, and I don't know how many weeks ago it's been, I had roughly 100K, and now I'm sitting at like 1.5 million.
Mm-hmm.
So like that's just from just doing random stuff, like doing my roulettes and doing hunt logs and.
Yeah, there's a bunch of ways to make a nice steady stream of gil.
Yeah, playing the game is no longer income negative like it was at release.
Yes. And they are very good at catch-up mechanics. Like, especially like gear catch-up, they're, like right now you can get, I want to say, not Shadow, the one before that.
Deep Shadow?
Yeah, I guess is Deep Shadow
Deep
available
Shadow's the
from the
460
hunts
from
now?
the hunts.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because Crystarium is what you can buy with the non-capped stones, and then Crypt Lurker is the top end tombstone gear.
Because we thought your tombstone gear should look like it's out of Bloodborne.
Yes.
And like,
but yeah, so you can get item level 460 gear, like you can get a full set of it for a just tiny amount of hunt currency.
And also, like, for the pieces that you can't get, or the pieces that you need to upgrade otherwise, like, getting a Crystarium weapon is still kind of a pain in the butt.
Weapons always are.
But you can get them off the vendors, or off the market board relatively reasonably for the 510 crafted gear. And like you said, okay, so crafting's in the system, or is in the game, and you don't have to interact with it, but it is detailed enough that like people love doing it, and as a result, there's a reasonable supply of gear flowing out onto the market to keep the prices at a decent level to where you can actually afford it.
Yeah, a set of XR kit gear isn't super pricey at this point, I don't think.
It's about
I haven't really looked, but
it's about 1.25 million.
Yeah, for a full set.
Everything, including for basically a full everything set.
Yeah. I bought just the sword today, and I think I paid 66K for it, for a gladiator main hand. So,
well, and then also, yeah, sure, Crystarium weapon is still a little annoying to get, but that's item level 490. You can get an item level 485 weapon for like 800 poetics. Like those are the easy. Joza.
The starter relic weapon?
The starter relic weapon is the easiest relic starter to get.
That they have ever made.
I have one for every single class that I have reached 80.
Same.
The first thing I do when I get a class to 80 now is I go and I turn in 4 more dust for another starter relic, because I have all of the dust I need for it, because what else was I going to spend all those poetics on?
Okay, I got to figure this out, because I'm now leveling characters. Like I got Red Mage to 80 this week, and I'm trying to gear it out.
Go to Rowena, buy 4 Thavnarian Scale Dust.
You can't do this until you've done this quest the first time.
Oh, okay. I guess so. Yeah, go to the Doman Enclave.
But the first one is actually entirely free.
That's true. The first one is completely free. So yeah, go to the Doman Enclave, get a free 485 weapon.
Okay.
I mean, they're not bad looking weapons either. They're kind of glowy. And then if you want to upgrade them, you can do Joza Marches, which is like Eureka but less painful. But yeah, they're real good about making it pretty easy to catch up to the current state of the game.
Yeah.
And for that matter, the last 4-man dungeon, the final one, like that rewards I think item level 505 gear.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Like
my one complaint, my one remaining complaint with I wish that trusts were
reasonable at all to level.
Yeah.
They're a lot better than they were.
But they're still kind of awful.
They still take some effort.
I played at launch, at expansion launch, it was misery.
They multiplied that XP amount by 4, I believe.
And then they improved the XP amount, and I tried it then, and it was merely very bad.
Yes, it is currently merely very bad.
Yeah, it's like 2 or 3 dungeon runs to level that set of characters.
That's
they no longer level at half your speed. Actually, they level at about your speed.
I mean, that would be fine. Like,
if you are not rested, they level at the exact same speed you do.
Here's the thing: like, if Square wanted some of my money really quickly, like boosts for the trust, I would buy boost potions for the trust in a heartbeat.
Oh yeah, I would buy trust boost potions instantly.
Because I like running with the trust, it's kind of cool, but I'm also randoming the hell out of dungeons. I've been tanking a lot of stuff, and I enjoy that too. But I really like running the dungeons at least the first time with the trust, so that you can see all the extra dialogue.
Yeah, same.
Did they ever
and the mechanics?
Did they ever implement the thing where they were going to let us down level ourselves?
For what?
So that we could do
absolutely, yes.
Do the main story quest over again?
Oh yeah, New Game Plus is in.
Hang on.
It doesn't get you XP or anything. It's just you can go back and re-experience it if you want.
Yes, if you want to see it again, you can do it, but it's largely pointless.
The only reason to do it is to see it again. That is the only reason to do it.
Oh, okay. I thought I could use it to level things. That would have been nice.
No.
I mean, I will say, leveling jobs is really easy, pending you're doing it casually.
Yeah.
It is super easy to put on a level, maybe a level and a half a day.
That's the thing, is that's not how I play.
I know. It's not how I play either. But once I've adapted to that mindset, I have a bunch of characters that I'm working on.
So, quite frankly, if you want to grind and also earn useful things, you can level in Bozja.
You can.
Well, but don't you have to be 71 to start that?
I do think you have to be 70 to go in.
I'm not sure if you do. I mean, you have to be max on something to unlock.
You do max on something to start it, and I think
whatever you go in with
but I'm not sure.
Whatever you go in with gets synced up to 80.
It's true.
I don't know from how low down though. I don't have anything lower than 74, so I can't test this.
Okay, I need to get through the main story so I can unlock that and see if I can level my lower level stuff, because everything I have
in fact 71. That's what you need to get to before you can level in there.
Bill, you can go and unlock it right now.
Okay.
I know where you are in the main story. You are so far
Past it.
beyond where you need to be to unlock it.
I
Yeah,
don't
like,
remember
go to
how
the
the hell
Dome-
you get to the Doman Enclave. I literally don't remember how to get there. I know I've
It
been
has an easy
there.
ride.
I know I've been there, and I know I have attuned to it, but I don't know if I see it in the list.
Should just be there under Stormblood stuff, under Doma. But yeah, that is an option for just like gaining a lot of XP, and you can get a lot of XP out of Joza. Or if you go in at level 80, you can earn the max tomestones. Not super quickly, but you can earn them.
And there's something that people do to farm just ludicrous amounts of money out of Bozja.
I mean, there's probably a market for the abilities that you can loot. I don't know. There was in Eureka.
It was like some kind of gemstones or something that you loot while you're playing.
Yeah, that you
And there
traded.
were people that were saying they were getting like 10 million from running a single 3-hour stretch. I don't know. Seems like madness to me.
I mean, there was definitely a thriving market for Eureka logograms back in the day. So, I mean, it's entirely possible that the same thing exists for the Joza equivalent.
Not to cut our discussion short on Final Fantasy XIV, but I think we've talked about it a lot. Kodra, you've been streaming Celeste?
I have been streaming Celeste. Yeah, so I've been doing this on every Monday night, and I am really enjoying the game. I'm trying to get myself to the point where I can beat Farewell on stream. So I've been playing a lot of Celeste on my Switch, and then I picked it up on Steam, and I don't own this game on Steam. So I've decided, I will go ahead and stream Celeste and fresh play and try and see how far I can get. But I am really enjoying this game and enjoying the play I've been able to get out of it. So yeah, it's a very interesting game from a number of perspectives, but just really enjoying getting to sort of chew my way through the more difficult sections of it.
I mean, most of what I know about it is that apparently once it gets difficult, it gets absurdly difficult.
It does have a tendency to get pretty difficult once it decides to really get difficult.
I mean, let's be clear, there is the end of the game, and then there is all the other things you can do.
Yeah, there's definitely that. So you could, I highly recommend playing this game, and the game ends once you get to the summit of Mount Celeste. And you can be happy knowing that you have beaten the game once you get to the summit of Mount Celeste. And if you want, you can do more than that and keep playing the game after that, and it will reward you for doing more than that. But you could also be just perfectly happy just getting to the summit of Mount Celeste. But yeah, after that, you go to the core. After that, you go to you can go to Farewell, and there's a whole bunch of stuff that you can do. It's quite fun. And I stream it on Monday nights around 8 Pacific. I'd invite anyone who wants to join watching. I will be trying to do a whole bunch of stuff. The game also has a whole bunch of mechanics it doesn't teach you, and I am slowly starting to learn. And it lets you do a bunch of cool stuff built with the idea of speedrunning in mind.
So are you kind of working towards eventually doing traditional speedruns of it?
Maybe. It's an interesting one. I think I might be at some point.
You still work on ILs, even though the full game speedrun is kind of long.
The full game speedrun is kind of long, but yeah, I could start working on individual level runs of it, which would be fun.
Yeah, I've seen you streaming a couple times, and I think I've even retweeted you a couple times, but I've not had a chance to tune in. I will try and do so.
But yeah, it is a very fun game to play. And a very fun game to stream.
I'm super intrigued about this next topic.
Yeah, well, okay. So we've talked a decent bit about Cyberpunk on this show. Or I guess more accurately, we've talked about the edifices around it.
I mean, I did talk some about it when I was actually playing it.
And like, yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot to unpack there. And I feel like we spent a lot of time around its launch talking about it and unpacking it. And you know, almost a year on, I managed to pick it up on sale and I've been curious because a lot of people I know, Bell and others, especially people who I would have expected, and in fact, in some cases have said, I will never play a CD Projekt Red game, have played it, and their takeaway has been, I was wrong about this game. And I've heard that probably 5 or 10 times in the last like 6 months from various people. And that's enough to pique my curiosity and, you know, take a look at it. And so, my tagline for this one was the Skeptic's Review.
Yeah, I mean, like I would say a lot of the talk around this game has been kind of a shallow interpretation of it. Like, it is a very surface level view of Cyberpunk. And the game itself is problematic at times, but also frickin' magical at times. Like, it's a mixed bag.
Yeah, and that's so. There's a concept in game dev about that goes by a variety of different names, but it is the charitable playtest. And charitable playtests are when you go into a thing expecting to like it, expecting to be okay with whatever issues it has. You know, when you have people who jump into a game that they're super excited for and have been for a while, and it mostly lives up to expectations, like isn't a glaring disaster, you're mostly getting charitable playtests. There's also the uncharitable playtest, the playtest in which you go in looking for the problems. And I'm not going to lie, like, probably to the surprise of nobody here or listening, based on my comments about the game months ago, I went into this with probably the most uncharitable playtest mindset I've ever had for a game. And like leaned into it. I was like, all right, so I'm expecting a game with a whole bunch of sexism problems, a whole bunch of racism problems, a bunch of bad takes on a variety of social issues. And so I rolled up a corporate lady to enter the cyberpunk world in, because I was like, what's the most uncharitable way I can approach this? And my takeaway is Bell's right. It's a mixed bag. When it's good, it's great. When it's good, it's fantastic. And it's good most of the time. Like, it is easily the most compelling, open world. I mean, I might even go to say it's the most compelling open world non-fantasy game I've played. And
is there a giant asterisk in there for whatever Horizon is?
Well, my asterisk for Horizon is, I think Horizon's storytelling and world building are better, but the actual act of wandering around the world isn't compelling to me.
Okay.
I fast traveled constantly in Horizon. I don't fast travel in Cyberpunk, partly because driving around is interesting, partly because there's enough interesting stuff happening, like ambient events that occur, that I like to be around for them, and they reward me well enough that I do want to stop the car as I'm driving by and I see one pop up. And I think that does a really interesting thing to the map, because fundamentally most modern open world games are doing their checklists. You have a bunch of icons on the map. Often it's an overwhelming number of icons. And as you check them off, there's no reason to ever go back to them. You're just sort of like, like I said, it's a checkbox. It's a checklist. You just check all the things off, and when you're done, you're done. And this there's some more dynamism going on. Like there's random encounters that spin up that you can approach. There are missions that only appear if you're wandering around a particular area under a particular set of conditions. And there's enough of these that if they all lit up like a Christmas tree, it would be overwhelming, but they don't. And so the end result is a game that flows pretty well without ever overwhelming me with so much stuff to do that I check out, which is a problem that I run into with a lot of open world games. On the other hand, like, I was unable to avoid seeing my character topless in character creation. It's not possible. Why? I don't know. I can't think of any reason why you would do this. It's like, why would you? What was the point here?
I mean, I think I said that on the show. Like the genitalia creation system is totally superfluous to the rest of the game.
It's not even turned on by default. It's just there, and you're like, why? Why did you? Why did you even bother including this? It's baffling to me. Like my take initially was that it was at best grossly tone deaf / intentional. And now it's just baffling. Like, why would you even bother? Because as soon as you get out of character creation, it's meaningless, just completely irrelevant. It's like the character creation scene in Metal Gear Solid. Like, what was that for? Why did we bother? I don't know. And then the game makes political statements. And boy, howdy, does this game have political statements to make. It is
a Cyberpunk game.
Yeah, it is.
I guess they didn't forget about that part.
They didn't. they didn't, and I love Deus Ex. Deus Ex is one of my favorite games of all time. This is a close sibling to that game. When this game has something to say about the world, it does it better, more poignantly, and with more teeth than Deus Ex ever did, and more coherently. It is not shy about anything it's doing, for better and worse. I think that this is just as much bad as it is good, because there's some stuff where it's like, what you are doing is gratuitous and unnecessary. There's a deeply messed up quest that I participated in long enough to sate my curiosity as to what was going on, and then once I knew what was going on, I noped out of it. And to its credit, the quest allows you to nope out of it by more than just walking away. You can be like, nope, I'm done. I don't want to be part of this. I'm out. And they're like, all right. Like at one point, a character's like, look, I'll pay you triple to just leave. And I'm like, okay, done. I don't want to be part of this. And I went and looked up what happens and was like, wow, I'm really glad I checked out of that. That's messed up. I don't want to be part of it. And it as much as it can in world, it warns you like, this is weird and messed up. Maybe you don't want to be a part of it. And, I find out I don't want to be a part of it and noped out.
Brain dancing quests in general are often really messed up.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the most poignant pieces of social commentary that the game has. And it's one of the places in which I think that it understands 80s cyberpunk. Cyberpunk has evolved since the 80s. And this is mostly not reflecting that. This is it is very, very, very 80s cyberpunk, where most of its ire, most of the punk part of it, is looking at materialism, capitalism as evil, corporations as evil, dehumanization of people as evil. And it makes absolutely and a pretty strong anti-authoritarian streak. And the game makes absolutely no bones about any of these. Like, I don't think it would be possible to walk away from this game with an ambiguous view of what it thinks about corporate interests, or, you know, the people being the methods by which capitalism forces people to give up their souls or their senses of self or their authenticity. Like, that is the message that it wants to send, and it is really unsubtle about it. And I think in the way that sci-fi as a genre takes nascent ideas that have potential and explores that potential, Cyberpunk traditionally takes things that are ubiquitous in society and takes them to their extreme.
Mm-hmm.
And this is very much that. Like, this is very much there is some disturbing world building. And it was interesting to me because I went back and loaded up a few saves in a few particular places in both the original Deus Ex and the new reboots. And it's interesting to see Deus Ex touch on the same things, talking about, for example, why, like in Deus Ex, it talks about, there's a couple of things that I had remembered reading about how actors in entertainment felt inauthentic, and so there was this push for crowdsourced, more authentic crowdsourced content that was exploitative. But that's really where it stops. You're like, oh, that's bad, but it doesn't really give you, it's like, oh, that's bad, and I can kind of imagine how that might be bad. But unlike cyberpunk literature, you don't really get to understand why it's bad. Cyberpunk has absolutely no qualms about showing you why it's bad. And often it's pretty disturbing. Like the whole braindance thing.
Well, one of the things that I think is important to understand about Night City is this is a setting where no one gets out untouched. Like, everyone is being negatively impacted by this city. Doesn't matter what echelon of life, everyone is being negatively impacted by this city. And you kind of get a tour of what it is doing to every class of society.
Yeah.
You do some quests working for somebody that basically is running for mayor, which is pretty high up in the echelon. You do quests for corporate types. They're all just as locked into the pattern of this city as anyone else is, and just as negatively impacted by its whims.
Yeah, like it is the game's location. I think that there's a lot of cyberpunk, especially more recent cyberpunk, and this is why I say it's got a very 80s cyberpunk thing going on. Cyberpunk from like the 90s and the 2000s present a dystopian world in about equal measure with a world with cool stuff that you might want to have. Yeah, there's some problem. Like, yes, there's problems, but maybe if you fixed them, things could be so much better. And it doesn't really. And it's not something that I realized until I had the comparison. But it's eliding the fact that some of these things are systemic. It's like, oh, there's some bad people. If you remove the bad people, things could be fine. This dystopia could be a utopia. Cyberpunk is not messing around with that. It is one of the hallmarks of 80s Cyberpunk versus later Cyberpunk from a literature standpoint is this is systemic. It gets everyone. No one is safe, and there's no easy solutions.
Yeah, I mean, there are several times in the game where you take out this ringleader that is a bad actor, and someone worse comes into the vacuum to fill the space.
And it's not because it's interesting because it's largely doing this while not necessarily being an indictment of humanity, which is another place I've seen this go. Like, I have seen this is bad, everyone is bad, human beings are terrible, there's nothing redeeming about any of these people. There are plenty of people with plenty of redeeming qualities throughout this game. There's some incredibly endearing characters. They're just stuck in awful systems. And a lot of what the game is doing is showing you how systems grind people away. And it's also one of the most ruthless teardowns of the modern day United States that I've ever seen, possibly because it's not a Western game or it's not a like United States, Western Europe game. I mean, I guess to wrap it up a bit, I picked this up because, in large part, because Bell's impassioned commentary on the game and like deep and abiding sadness that no one else was going to play it, like, was curious. What made me curious, because if it were truly like that much of a mess, I know Bell would reject it and has in the past.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, what is it? What's going on here? Let's see it. And
like, it sounds like something I will probably want to check out eventually. It also seems like a pretty big game, and my gaming budget is looking for smaller things right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I will say one thing that is kind of nice about it is it does have a lot of small destination pieces that are little bits of content.
It is really easy to, I mean, I hopped on and played through a quick mission in 15 minutes before the podcast.
Like, there are some big set pieces, but there's also so many little world building set pieces around the world, and I'm sure I didn't find all of them. But like, you get called by these operatives, and I forget what they are, the fixers. And just as you're driving through a destination, you'll get called on the phone saying, hey, I need your help with this. And it's always something around the corner from where you're at currently. And it's super easy to just like pop over and do the thing. And you get cash, you get sometimes cool rewards. There's some long quest chains for characters that are really great.
Most of the characters that I work with on the regular, they're either generally decent people, or I know they're jerks and I'm dealing with them because I have to, and it helps drive the systemic problems narrative that the game is leading on.
One of my favorite characters of all time is Delamain.
Delamain is great.
Delamain is an AI cab operator. It's Johnny Cab from Total Recall, but like an actual AI.
And it's you get a pretty, if you dig for it, you get a pretty reasonable backstory on how this happened.
So I think one of the things that's important to understand about Night City is, in the story leading up to this game, there was a corporate world between Arasaka and what's the military, Miltech, and they lost a lot of ground, and there was like a full-fledged war, like tanks and everything between these two companies. And Night City was kind of this no man's land in between their corporate fiefdoms. And it remains neutral, but it also remains largely ungoverned.
Yeah.
So all of the districts are basically their own little territory. Sometimes it's a gang that's leading it. Sometimes it's a corporate area that's leading it. Arasaka and Miltech both have operatives in the city that you end up interacting with along the way. But, like, this is the Wild West of Cyberpunk. You know, there's very little authority that anyone has, and it's very clear that this isn't because no one wants to, it's because they can't. They just don't have the resources to try and rein in everything that's going on in the city.
Well, and it's hyper-capitalist. So anything that helps people or helps restore order kind of gets in the way of those profits, and so nobody bothers. And it becomes an extension of what do you get when you have unregulated capitalism?
Well, it's very much kind of like Novaria, the capitalist planet in Mass Effect, but the wheels have gone off the rails.
Yeah. And it'll be interesting. It's also interesting to see, like, so when a game, one other note, as somebody with a Spanish speaking background, I have a tendency to notice Latino and Latina characters in video games because, to be frank, we are super rare.
Mm-hmm.
And basically fall into one of two categories: gang members and prostitutes, with the slight exception of you will occasionally see detectives. In almost every case, these are women, and they do not have any authority over other people, and that's a continuable plot point. And like that, I can count the number of exceptions to this on one hand. And the occasional other one you see are hackers, which is sort of an extension of the whole criminal thing. And thus far, not seen a deviation from that one. The sole Latin characters I've run into have been gang members or a hacker. But that one stands out because otherwise representation seems pretty good. And in fact, like, especially in the more Asian districts of town, like Japantown and Chinatown and Koreatown, there are absolutely people who will call you out on making racist assumptions. And like, great.
Good.
Like,
I will say the mayoral candidate that you assist is Latino.
I've met them, and while I guess that's true,
I mean, I think that's what's supposed to be the case.
It's pretty unrecognizable.
Yeah.
But also, yes, there are Latin gang members. On the other hand, somebody went to the trouble to do the research on how a certain particular Mexican funeral ritual is done. And it's like actually done. I mean, I'm not the right flavor of Latino to weigh in on this one, but from what I know, it's pretty respectful and well done.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a hell of a lot better than I can say about, I mean, almost any other Mexican culture thing I've seen in a video game ever.
I love Sebastian Ibarra.
Oh yeah, there is that priest. The priest is definitely.
Well,
I'm not going to say he's not a gang member, though.
Yeah, yes, he's a priest in quotes.
Right.
Okay.
But he's super good. Like, he's a great character.
I did think of one set of Latino characters that do not fall under your categories, and you're mentioning funeral made me think of it. Everybody in Grim Fandango.
Okay,
but that's
fair.
like the only thing I can come up with. And also, they're all skeletons.
Right.
What's interesting is having tried out the different starts to the game, you're basically given a choice of 3 paths. You go Corp or Nomad or Street Kid, I think.
Yeah, you're either...
Is what they call it.
Your background, it's very Mass Effect in your background choosing. You can be, the corporate background, the grew up on the streets background, or the grew up outside the city background.
It's really interesting how each of your backgrounds weaves you in a different set of characters that you're going to meet elsewhere.
Yeah.
So, like, having seen all 3, it's interesting to see how they snap into the world. Because, like, the world's the same regardless. It's just your backstory fits you into a piece of the world.
Yeah. Well, and you feel like a piece of the world. Even the overarching plot, as far as I've gotten to it, is a piece of a world. There's still a lot going on on the sidelines. It's
a very rich and textured world.
It
took a lot of time to build all of this. And the way that things, like, there's an integrity to the world. Like, things that you do in this corner will affect something that happens in another corner.
Well, and even stuff like, I mean, the other thing that I remember from the previews that was a big problem was the advertising, like the in-world advertising. And I'm not going to be an apologist for it, because I think that there is a time and a place for being thoughtful and sensitive. And the game is not interested in being either of those things. And when it is doing so to make its messages more poignant, it is the same as when it is doing so for shock value. And I don't find shock value to be that valuable. But it is incredibly consistent about the ads throughout the game. There are a huge amount of fabricated ads for various products littered throughout the game. I mean, I've seen multiple hundreds of different advertised products, and like almost all of them are driving home that like deeply ingrained anti-capitalist message.
Mm-hmm.
What's interesting too is you end up with a lot of side quests that involve some of those products.
It's like, yeah, it's this thing where it's like these are blatantly corporate creations, and this game makes no bones about corporations being terrible. So of course the things they create are terrible.
Yeah. I think some of the backlash against that came out of this ongoing problem of people somehow thinking that something being included in a story is necessarily supporting that thing, or like saying it's good.
I will say that this game features both some of the most exploitative representations of trans folk that I've seen, but also some of the most real and genuine that I've ever seen. And like, it has the best trans character I've ever seen in a game. Ever, hands down. It is the best representation of a trans woman. But it is deep in the game and deep behind a story mission, but also like there's exploitative ads everywhere throughout the city.
Right.
But there's exploitative ads for everything throughout the city. So like that was one of the points that people latched on in the reviews, was posting this same picture over and over. Yeah, that's in the game. But so is Milfgard, which is, I don't even know what Milfgard is. But it's a thing that's advertised throughout the game.
Yeah, I mean, I have seen, like, I was prepared to find that particular ad, but there are a lot of ads that I've looked at and been like, that's pretty messed up.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really clear that it's intentional. Like,
Yeah.
you are supposed to look at these ads and find them gross.
Yeah.
That's the whole point.
This is meant to be a cyberpunk corporate hellscape. So
yeah,
the things they're selling you are going to be, you know, in service to that.
And
makes
I'll be
sense.
honest, like, at first I was just like, why is every ad this, like, you know, because they do there's a lot of ads that are hypersexualized because advertising is. But the one that crystallized it for me, where I was like, oh no, this is very intentional throughout this whole thing, was the ad that was like, it's for a budget firearms company in the game that creates disposable guns.
Okay.
And I forget the exact, like, presentation of the ad, but it's basically now all in plastic. Now all plastic. Don't ever be caught without your Second Amendment rights. Here are the locations of all of our vending machines. And I was like, ugh. But also, like, that's what it's doing.
I mean, are we sure that's not an ad from the real world?
Yeah, that.
Right. And that was the thing. It's like, it's
because that's the thing with good cyberpunk is, like, it takes the real world and it doesn't really go all that far with its extrapolations. It doesn't have to take it too far away.
Right.
Like, it adds some new technology, and then, okay, what would the world that currently exists, like, what would the existence of that technology do to it?
Yep. It's like, oh, hey, here's cocaine is legalized. Here's an ad for vending machine Coke.
It's like Mr. Speed or something like that.
Yeah, like, there's a whole line of fruit snacks or something that are for when you're super high. And like, and that is the kind of thing that I expect out of Cyberpunk. Like, it is supposed to be a little stomach churning, because it's supposed to hit too close to home. And honestly, it's quite good at it. Like, this game is really good at pushing buttons because it is really good at hitting just a little too close to home. And I think it goes a little too far in a few occasions, but it is significantly better than I was expecting it to be. And while it is certainly not without its problems, I think that to some extent it wears its problems on its sleeve in a way that other games do not. It is very hard to ignore the problems this game has, and which makes it, I think, easier to view with a more critical eye, versus the game that kind of pushes them under the table and makes it more tacit and more implicit and subtle and easier to ignore and miss the message of.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the reviews that I read that were extremely harsh, I could tell from playing the game that they bounced really early, just by the way that they were talking about things. And like,
it's an easy game to bounce off of.
It is super easy to bounce off. Like, if you have at all of a sensitive constitution, you're going to have trouble with this game. But like, there's a depth there and interesting things going on. And
I mean, I'll be honest, I almost bounced off of the
I remember
out of the intro.
I remember the messages I got that night, and then like an hour later you had shifted. So yeah, I mean, it's a weird game. Like, it was my favorite game of last year, and it was doing just wildly different things than what I was used to. But like, it creates a lot of characters that you care about. like, yeah, they're in a shitty situation and you want to do whatever you can to help them out, but also you're in a shitty situation.
Yeah. And like a big part of the agency that allows you to feel heroic in the game is that you can, to some extent, shrug off some of the pressures that are affecting other people. And that alone is a kind of privilege which you have that other people don't, and other people comment on.
Part of that, though, is probably owned up to the central conceit of the game, which is super spoilery. But you've got your own things going on. You've got bigger problems than whatever's going on in Night City. Yeah.
It's also, and I realize that this is a bizarrely low bar, but it is a cyberpunk game that doesn't mechanically punish you for cybernetics.
That's,
I mean, like,
yeah,
it punishes my wallet,
right?
But like, but for whatever reason, that's like a trope in cyberpunk games.
Oh yeah, the whole,
because
like,
it makes you less human.
Yes, by replacing all of your meat parts, you are becoming less human.
Cyberpunk does not hold that view at all, and in fact goes to great pains.
There was an RPG that I looked at recently that I need to remember the name of now, that also went with that option. Like, yes, this stuff is expensive, but it doesn't like make you less human. There's no mechanical penalty for it.
Yeah. Like, I know the original Cyberpunk, tabletop game had the concept of cyberpsychosis, but there was also the implication that there was something more to it than just people were replacing too much of themselves. And I get the impression that they went further with that here.
They definitely went further with that.
Yeah. Good.
I mean, almost
like there's reasons why that all happened.
Yeah.
And it is not the cybernetics.
Yeah. Like even some of the stuff that I've seen is like, and I haven't delved into those quest lines at all. There's a whole quest line about it that I haven't really touched. But even what I haven't seen, it's like, it's laced with this is hand-wringing media spin. Not like, this is media alarmist spin, not actual things going on. It's like, oh, hey, let's call this the problem to distract from the actual very real problems that we aren't talking about, because there's a lot of that. That is a ongoing theme of the problems we don't talk about.
Good.
The game I was thinking of is called Hardwired Island.
Hardwired Island. That sounds like a reality show I would watch, I'll be honest.
I mean, there is like a body system kind of thing going on that it tells you how much you can actually wear, but you don't have any real negative effects of it.
I mean, yes, okay, game balance can be a thing.
Yeah.
I mean it's also just like, it's like the physical, it's like how much body do you have to put chrome on?
Like, you only have so many points to attach things.
Sure.
Places on your body to attach stuff. Yeah. You only have so many limbs to replace.
Well, and interestingly, it also goes the other way, where it doesn't, because I've also seen the thing where it's like, you'd be a fool not to chrome out entirely. What are you even doing? And like, I'm not doing that, and it's not a problem. My skills and my needs lie elsewhere. I have
there's a couple things that you probably want, but other than that,
like my super top tier sweet cybernetics are my eyes and my data jack.
And if you're really into weapons, you probably want a smart gun attachment for your arm that like basically allows the calculations of the weapon to take place or whatever, that allows bullets to curve around corners and stuff like that. But that's like something that's on the palm of your hand with a few faces with individual guns.
With a few patches, it is also like it's pretty stable on my computer. There's every so often something will go weird. I think that the places where I notice like just weird game functionality, every so often an NPC will path or T-pose through something, which honestly is no worse than any Elder Scrolls game I've ever played.
Yeah.
And I think those are great. So whatever.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the level at which I would consider the bugs I encountered. Like, there's just some weird stuff going on at times. Like, I don't know if you've encountered the random car just exploding.
I mean, that sounds entirely appropriate to Night City, honestly.
Yeah.
Are you sure that's a bug?
I mean, I see stuff and it is clearly a bug. Like, the things that I like weird bugs / performance oddities that I've noticed. The one that I noticed the most is periodically the little icon to let you know that there's an object to be picked up will persist after I've picked up the object, or there will be an object that I know I haven't picked up that I can't like stand in the right place for the pickup detection to kick in, and so I just have to leave it. It doesn't happen. It happens often enough that I'm like mildly annoyed by it, but not so often that I'm like, this is unplayable.
And a lot of times if you just walk away and then walk back, it'll kind of trigger and you can pick it up then.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of things where like I had an NPC that was supposed to be a quest NPC just like, I don't know, give up and start pedestrianing around. I was like, aren't we supposed to be doing something? And he's just like, no, I'm going shopping. Like just stopped responding to inputs and was wandering around shops, spouting generic dialogue. And like, that was weird, but it was fixed with it was fixed with just a checkpoint load.
One of the favorite things that this game does that I'm not sure I remember other games doing is I'm going to hop in the car with you and the NPC is going to drive me somewhere and we're going to have a conversation while we drive. But it's going to be like a fairly natural feeling conversation.
Okay. I know I've played one or two other games that have done that, but I don't remember now what games they were.
I've seen that done here, and it's done very well. They have incredibly immersive in like seamless cutscenes where like, oh, you sit down at a bar with somebody or you sit down on a couch and have a chat or whatever the case, and they use it really, really well. Lots of custom animations and so on. And the last thing that I've noticed that I did have the cops called on me for parallel parking. I no longer try to parallel park. I just pull over onto the sidewalk and I'm like, whatever, deal with it. I was trying to, like, I saw a parking space and there's some people standing near, but not in the parking space. So I pulled my car into the parking space and they all completely freaked out and ran away and the cops came. And I was like, what? Why though? I was parking in the parking space. But other than that, that was weird. Almost every vehicle I've driven handles like a boat, and
I will find you the settings because there's one quest in particular I could not complete just at all because steering is hell in the game. And then I applied these tweaks and it fixed it. And I was trying to find it before the podcast, but all I could find was a damn video instead of an article. Internet at large, just write things out. It's great. People should blog. Make a blog. Do a blog post.
I miss the days. I miss game facts. It's one of the things I'm always happy about when I'm playing an older game. Is I can go to GameFAQs and get the information there in text form.
Yeah, where I can search and read it and hold it steady on a screen. So if I need to check back on it, I can look again.
Copy and paste from it.
Yeah.
If it's a command.
Those were the days.
I miss text. I read faster than most people talk.
I know, and this is what gets me in trouble with games like Mass Effect. Is I end up skipping dialogue because I read so much faster than the actors act.
The voice acting is really good, and that is one other thing that I noticed. The voice acting for my lady main character is probably sacrilege to say better than FemShep. So instead, I will just say at the same level. Incredibly good.
Yeah, I've played some of male V and female V. And
I checked out of male V. I couldn't with him. I was like, nope, I can't listen to this voice. He's too gang bro. I couldn't.
I mean, I liked both. And we're probably getting close to time.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm glad you've had this experience, Tam, because like it at least validates some of what I said. Like, it's a deeply nuanced game. It's got its pluses and it's got its negatives.
Yeah, it's also a deeply mixed bag. Like,
I mean, based on what I've heard tonight, I will probably actually pick up and play this game at some point. So
they've also been patching it on a constant basis.
That's good.
yeah.
So like one of the last little anecdotes about how intricate this world is, the very first teaser trailer for this game showed someone with cyberpsychosis and mantis blades and getting shot by the police.
Yep.
That incident exists in the world. It is history in the world. If you go to the right place and talk to the right people, you happen into a quest series that explains what happened. And then that NPC that was the lady with the mantis blades is still around in the world. So, like, it's got these weird little intricate details. Like, and there's lots of stuff that you have to really look for it, but like, wow, here's this whole depth for something that I was not expecting. Anyway, any final thoughts?
I just wanted to say thanks, Alan, for turning us on to Bluey. It's great.
Yes. Have you hit any of the episodes that give you all the feels yet?
I think we hit one. The one I don't even remember, the one where they're building the porch swing.
Yes, flat pack.
I caught the tail end of that, and I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, this is adorable."
Yeah,
and then the other one that I saw that I just loved was the ice cream one.
I may not have seen that one.
I mean, it's all about them they are trying to share ice cream, but they end up sharing it poorly, and it all melts.
Yes, that is a good one.
It's my favorite because it's got my opinion on ice cream, which is, of course, the best ice cream is chocolate.
Yes, 100%.
What?
No.
False.
No.
Clearly, we need to end the podcast here before we get into a large argument.
No, real quick, my very favorite, I don't know if you've seen it yet, is Duck Cake.
I don't know that I've seen it.
Duck Cake is the episode more than any other that made me realize that I just I am simpatico with Bandit. I identify with Bandit so hard.
I identify with Bandit a lot as well.
Because it is an episode in which it's Bingo's birthday, and she gets to pick what cake she wants out of this it's apparently a real cookbook. Like, it's a real cookbook in Australia from like the 70s. And she picks the duck cake, which is apparently infamous. And it's up to Bandit to make the duck cake because Chili is taking Bingo to hockey practice. And so it's Bandit trying to make this cake while also trying to convince Bluey to pick up all of the Lego from out in the main room. And and there's just this moment where he just collapses in utter defeat. And yeah, I've been there.
Yep.
But yeah, no, it is the most amazing show.
It is great.
Alrighty. Well, hopefully you enjoyed the show, and we will see you again next week.
Later.
Good night.
Good night.
That this place can become such as paradise. What a wonderful world such would be.
See ya.